Alright, welcome back to the Supercoach Nuff channel. In this video we're going to preview round 17 of the 2025 NRL Supercoach season. So before we get into my team, we'll have a look at the most popular trade-ins, trade-outs, as well as popular captaincy options. So on the trade-out list this week, number one, Fletcher Sharp. So unfortunately, in that tackle, he went off for a HIA. Turns out he busted a kidney and a spleen, so he is done for the rest of the year. So unfortunately, if you're a Fletcher Sharp owner, you do have to trade him out. Speaking of unfortunate injuries, Jack Bostock out with an ACL. So if you brought him in, particularly last week, trying to get a bit of quick cash before the buy, you still got 85k. So not the biggest loss, but unfortunately another one we do have to trade out this week. At number three, Homole Olakau'atu. So still out for a few weeks with that shoulder injury. So probably, one you can move on. Riley Smith suspended, out for a couple of weeks, not back till round 20. So I guess it's just an awkward price, 420k. You're probably going to have to go up, I think, to a keeper. So I guess if you don't have any hookers this week, with Sandon Smith also being indicated as out this week, but Roosters are on a bye anyway. So yeah, probably if you're without a hooker, you may want to trade these guys. I guess with the flex, you do have the option as well of just taking the auto emergency. But that does depend on who else is in your squad. Jackson Purdue, so against the Titans this week, would be one I'd seriously consider holding. The Titans are probably leaking the most points for Supercoach, and Purdue moving back to the centres as well suggests that that's when he was scoring at his best. So a bit wider, a bit more room to move potentially. Could be good signs for him. So probably a hold if I did own him. Lockie Hubner, so moved back to the bench this week. So he's probably one I'm going to look at trading this week, giving away some of my moves. But he probably will leak a bit of cash if he can upgrade. I think that's great. If you can use some loops to some drill positions rather to downgrade him, I think that's a viable option as well. Nathan Lawson, so not named this week. Tui Pelotu back in the squad. So probably one we do have to move on. There is a downgrade option if you need. But I think the obvious option is to find a little bit of cash and go for the cheapie of the week, which I'm sure we'll see number one on the trade-ins list very shortly. Siwa Wong on the bye this week, but also with a knee injury, so yeah, he is a sell. And Jaden Campbell obviously misses out the next 2 weeks with the Titans on bye in round 18. I think, though, he is a hold. It all depends on your team structure, who your other 5/8 is, but probably one I'm going to hold. On the trade-in list this week, number one, I think fairly obvious, Josiah Karapani. So ridiculously good break-even thanks to back-to-back 90s. That left edge for the Broncos is pretty good for Supercoach scoring. And they do play next week as well, so a very useful number for round 18. So I think, rightfully so, the number one traded in player this week. At number two, Jacob Kiraz. So has the base to score big against anyone, but obviously try scoring upside there as well. As you can see, got the new Heritage jersey on, ready to rip tonight against Panthers. I reckon it'll be a great game. But yeah, I think Kiraz is a keeper and you can bring him in with confidence. Harry Grant at number three is an interesting one, given that he won't play next week. May get rested round 19. or at some point in the back end of the season. So I think, I understand people looking for a hooker this week with the Smiths out, that sort of thing. But probably one I'd try and wait for if I can. Um, the one I saw, which is a bit of a really short term play, but Blake Brayley plays this week. Obviously, isn't playing next week. But I suppose if you're moving from someone like a Riley Smith, he wasn't going to play next week anyway. So you sort of get the same coverage, but a nice little cash bump from Brayley thanks to a couple of good games. And then you can bring in Harry Grant. Maybe if you don't have the trades, you've just got to lock Grant in as your keeper, then it makes sense. Herbie Farnworth, it is an expensive price to pay, but he just keeps delivering the goods in the centre wing. Um, I don't think I could bring him in at that price, but I do already have him, so it's a bit hard for me to say. Don't bring him in. So I think for almost 200 grand cheaper, you could get Zach Lomax in, offers a similar sort of upside. Maybe the base isn't quite there, but we do know Lomax is a mad ball runner from the backfield. Um, so I don't think there's that much difference between them, and you save 200k. Viliami Kikau, don't hate it. He's going well this year. Covers next week, which is nice. Round 19 as well. In fact, the Bulldogs don't have another bye now for the rest of the year. So these sort of keeper options you can bring in. I'm probably not going to bring in Kickout, but the second row at the Bulldogs is an area I am targeting. Lomax, as I just said, I probably prefer him to Farmworth just for the value. But I think, below Kiraz is appropriate given he won't play next week. I guess that's the other thing with Herbie as well, is Herbie doesn't play next week, so it's a lot of money to invest for this week and then a week on the bench. Latu Fino is an interesting one, named in the 7 jersey. Um, and I guess if he goes half decently, he will lock that in for the rest of the season. The Tigers do play round 18 and round 19, which is good. Um, so I guess if you've got the ability to bring in a 5'8" this week, he would be the target, nice and cheap, potential for growth, all the good stuff in there. Lehigh Helpawati, so locked in at fullback. Tommy Turbo named in the centres this week. I guess as a centre wing option, it's all right as long as you can cover him for round 19. Don't hate that trade in. Alex Johnston, so I guess this is the time of year where people start to look at AJ, for the try scoring upside. Obviously the base isn't there, so if he doesn't score a try, you're going to struggle. And the Dolphins' defense has been pretty good of late. Although I think last week it wasn't as fantastic as what it has been, but the Dolphins could bounce back this week. And Aaron Clark, I guess a keeper in that second row, front row forward sort of loop, not loop, I keep saying loop, dual position setup. Doesn't play next week is the only issue. So you're bringing him in for a week to then just sit on the bench for a week. But obviously, if you can cover for round 18, he is a keeper option there. Captains, I need to set up for. So we'll go the top 10%, see what the big guns are doing. So in terms of captaincy this week, the most popular in the top 10%, Scott Drinkwater, which I think is pretty interesting given he has been down on form of late. If we go to his stats, 5-round average of just 60, but I guess the Titans is a nice matchup. The last game of the round 2, so it does open up some VC options. So I can definitely understand it, but I wouldn't have had him as my number 1 option this week. Ryan Pappenhausen up against the Sharks. I think it's a Sunday afternoon at Amy Park, which is nice. I probably prefer this over Drinkwater if I'm being honest. And I guess it's not that far off in terms of captaincy. Herbie Farnworth at number 3. I mean, just keep going back to the well while the going's good. I guess I just see it as the form's got to run out at some point. There will be one game where he's a little bit quieter. Don't necessarily think it's going to be this game. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, again, maybe just being a bit conservative with my captaincy options, which is explaining my low captaincy rank this season. Payne Haas, I think, is the safe, secure option up against the Warriors. He backed up from Origin last week with 108. He's averaging 91 for the year. So I think if you just want to lock in something nice and safe this week, here's the safe, easy option. Jacob Kiraz, a few people going all out tonight against the Panthers. I think the VC is probably a more preferable option, just given if he doesn't score a try, he's a risk of getting a 50-60 type score. I think the Panthers are one of the more defensively solid teams, although their season hasn't proven to be, but they're definitely improving in form. So yeah, he's one to probably loop in the VC and see how you go. James Tedesco on the bye this week, so probably people just holding out from last week, not making their moves yet. Cam Munster, so I guess we said all the good stuff about Pappenhausen. Same applies for money. Kyle Matangi up against the Dolphins. The way he's been scoring this season, it's a safer option. Terrell May, same sort of deal against Manly tonight. No, tomorrow night, sorry. Zach Lomax at number 10. So up against the Dragons, who, haven't been the best team at the moment. I do like that as a point of difference option. So for my team this week, trades not going to be too much different from what I had suggested before with bringing in Karapani in the centres and Jacob Preston in the second row. The difference is I am going to trade Stewart and Hubner, just given they're both coming off the bench. It's going to limit their scoring. So they might just lose a bit more value. They've both made me a couple of 100K, more or less. I think Hubner's at 180. So I'm going to bank that. Fermor can move up to allow me to bring in Karapani. And then I need to go away from break-evens, go to averages to find Jacob Preston. So going him over Kickout, just personal preference, I think. He probably has a little bit more try scoring upside than Kickow, although you would think Kickow does, but I think teams generally spot him up pretty well and have him on the tip sheet, whereas with Preston, they can't sort of plug every gap, so he tends to find a few more. So I'm going to lock in those trades. And I guess as well, sort of where does that position me overall? Well, next week we've got enough. We've got Drell May, Nafahu White, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 second row options. Maybe Kalal Matangi finds his way into the New South Wales team, but so if we count that as 3, so 5, 6, 7 in the halves, 8, 9, 10 in the centre wing, 11, 12, 13 with the 3 fullbacks. So, maybe if Pasifiki, Tonga or Lawson find their way back in, that's an extra number. But I think we'll be okay for next week. And then round 19, we're pretty sweet. But a bit similar to Sports Deck, we do have a plan. So next week, I'm going to bring in Jed Stewart, as long as I guess it doesn't go completely sideways with him. Bank a little bit of cash, but it's not really about the cash. It's a number for next week. And then also, I guess, maybe a potential, quick cash gen, perhaps. Round 19 is the plan is to use the final boost. So that's when we'll bring LKT out and upgrade to Cleary. I'm predicting it's going to cost about 390, but we've definitely got enough money to cover. We're also going to downgrade Billy Smith after round 18 to just a bottom dollar centre wing second rower, so I can get Fermor back if I need to in the centre wing. And that should also provide enough money to upgrade Hugo Savala to Connor Watson. And so, with the news today around the last round of dual position updates, Kurt Donahue is going to get hooker second row flexibility. So that's going to give me some options around, having a third hooker in the team. So I can sort of interchange Donahue with Watson if need be. And that's going to give me a bit of money in the bank to sort of put towards Egan going up to Grant. I think I might have to sort of do one more nuff trade. So whether that's Pasifiki Tonga, whether it's Karapani if we need the extra money, if Stewart's made enough, that might work. It will all just depend on that. I think Pasifiki Tonga would be ideal. If I can just squeeze that 80, 70, 80K, get like a second row, front row swing to get in. Matangi will have dual position. Tino will have dual position as well. So just to keep the forwards all open for movement would be ideal. And then that also leaves me with 6 trades to cover injuries. But by then, I should pretty much have a squad that's about 22 deep. Lots of flexibility through like forward, the front rows, second row hooker, and into centre wing. So it'll basically be the fullbacks and the halves where we need to use those trades potentially. Because they'll all be keeper options, so it'll just be sidewaysing as that occurs. So yeah, so that's how the team's set up with the trades and future trades. Captain, vice captain this week. So I think I've got to set up the team first. So let's get rid of the buys. So Donahue is going to be a reserve this week for sure. Probably going to have to use these guys as well. Preston plays early, so I'll swap him with Fermor. Play those two. They play in the last game, so they can sit on the bench. I don't think I need to play King Togia this week, so I'll avoid. Kiraz, although he plays first. So I'll just put Karapani on the bench for now. So I could come down to Karapani or Donahue for the last spot. Or we could play Donahue and not play Wade Egan potentially. So I might look at that. I think there's a bit of upside in Karapani this week, so I do like playing him. And then obviously the three fullbacks aren't playing, so Drinkwater comes in. That makes the decision a lot easier. Wade Egan, we do have King Togia as an extra if we need an auto emergency this week. So I think, Karapani's fine on the bench. The two Titans guys. Donahue does play a bit later in the week, so we'll put him on the bench. So yeah, vice captain, captain. I think I'll go Kiraz as the vice captain tonight. Hopefully he does do the business. And then captain, like I do want to just go the safe Payne Haas route, but is that really going to help me improve overall? I haven't even checked my head-to-head matchups yet. So, I guess the cash league's down here. It doesn't look like I'm doing too well. Well, I do have a couple of easier ones this week, so maybe Payne Haas is the way. What are we doing up here? So, I guess a lot of guys haven't updated their teams from last week yet. So, again, a couple of easier matchups based on rankings. So maybe I'll look at Louis Legend sitting third. So he's got Haas. And so he's coming in this week. Probably Tedesco, Tino, Ruben Garrick will slot in. So there might be some trades there as well. Yeah, might just play it safe. Payne Haas is captain. Kiraz is VC. Obviously, if that works out well, heaps of options of who to bring in. So yeah, we'll run with that and go from there. So Yeah, as always, if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to add them below this video. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy, or like that is, if you enjoy the Supercoach content. Subscribe for all the fantasy sports content on the channel. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.